Welcome to Lesson 11, the final piece of our P1 foundation, and the one that finally makes your fleet auditable. We're tackling logging the production way, journaled for live debugging, rsyslog for the traditional SysAdmin log files your auditors actually want to see, logrotate to keep disks bounded, and forwarding to a SIAM for compliance and incident response. By the end of this lesson, observability is complete and you're ready to harden in P2. First, let's clear up a common misconception. On modern Debian, you don't choose between journaled and rsyslog. You run both, and they each have a job. Journaled is the primary collector, ingesting everything from kernel messages to app stout, and it's where you go for live debugging with structured queries like journalctl po error unjinx. rsyslog then reads from journaled and writes the classic .var log text files your auditors and SIM forwarders expect. The rule of thumb, live debug goes through journalctl, audit and forensics go through var log. Same events, two views, both indispensable. Now, journaled out of the box has a dirty secret. It writes to run log journal, which is tmpfs, meaning every reboot, your logs evaporate. Fine for a laptop, unacceptable for production. The fix is a one-time mkdir under var log journal, plus a system tmp files call to get the permissions right, and journaled flips to persistent mode automatically. But, and this is the lo5 callback, persistent without a cap will eventually fill var and take the box down. So you set system max use to 2 gigs, system keep free to 500 megs, and you sleep at night. Forward to syslog.is is what hands events to rsyslog for the audit trail we just discussed. Verify with journalctl, disk usage, and pretrial list boots. Multiple boot entries means persistence is live. So once journaled is forwarding, rsyslog takes over and does the actual routing. Every message gets tagged with a facility, auth, kern, mail, or one of the local Oduro through local 7 slots reserved for your apps, plus a severity from emerge down to debug. The rule syntax is dead simple. Selector on the left, destination on the right. Debian's defaults already split auth, kern, and mail into their own files. The production move is what you see at the bottom. Point your custom app at local browser, give it a dedicated log file, and add a stop action so it doesn't double write into syslog. Drop noisy facilities with a tilde, restart, and fire a logger command to confirm the pipeline. Now that messages are routed, you need to stop them from eating the disk. Without rotation, auth.log grows until var fills and your pager goes off at 3 in the morning. Logrotate runs daily out of cron, reads per package configs from etc logrotate.d, and Debian ships sane defaults for apt, nginx, sh, and friends. For your own app, the recipe is on screen. Daily, keep 30, compress with delay compress, so today's file stays readable, missing awk and notifempty for race safety, and a post-rotate hook that reloads the service, so it reopens the file descriptor. And always validate with logrotate d first, debug mode prints what it would do without touching a thing. Rotation keeps the local disk sane, but if the host burns down, those logs burn with it. That's why we ship everything to a central SIAM, and we encrypt the pipe, because auth.log is a goldmine of usernames, source IPs, and pseudo command lines. The config on screen installs rsyslog gnuttles, trusts your SMCA, and forwards over TLS on 6504 with X509 peer verification. 2 details worth calling out. Stream driver mode equals 1 makes TLS mandatory, no silent downgrade, and the disk-assisted queue spools up to a gig if the seam goes dark, so you don't drop events during an outage. Now, rsyslog and journaled cover the what happened story, but compliance auditors ask sharper questions, like every write to etc. passed in the last 90 days. That's audity territory, a kernel-level subsystem that watches syscalls, file paths, and privilege transitions. The rule set here is a solid production baseline. identity files tagged identity, sudoers tagged sudoers, setuid and setgid calls tagged privesc, and module loads tagged modules for rootkit detection. The -E2 locks the config so nobody edits rules at runtime, and allsearch by key gives you instant forensic queries. We go deep on this in Lesson 15. With the audit trail in place, the daily habit becomes the real defense. 5 queries, 5 minutes. Errors since yesterday for the broad sweep. Failed units for crashed services. Failed password counts for brute force signals. Journal and var disk usage to dodge the 3 a.m. pager. And DMES filtered to errors and warnings for hardware whispers like smart failures or kills. Alias the whole drill as morning, one command, and you've caught problems before they page you. But that morning drill works on one box. Scale to 100, and SSHing each one stops being a strategy. This is where Loki enters, Grafana's log database, fed by Promtail, the agent that tails journaled in your var log files and ships them centrally. Install it from apt, point the config at your Loki endpoint, label each scrape job with hostname and source, and suddenly log QL queries like job equals ngnx, matching a 5x pattern, sweep the whole fleet at once. Stage 04 builds the full stack. For now, just recognize the shape. Before we close out, the gotcha's real. 5 things that will bite you in production. Number 1 is the classic. Journaled ships with no size cap, so var grows until it doesn't, and services start failing. Set system max use and system keep free. Restart the daemon, done. 2. Log rotate silently not firing, because cron daily never ran. Test with run parts and force a dry run. 3. Custom app logs that logrotate has never heard of. Drop a config in etc. logrotate.d or just write to sit out and let system handle it. 4. Forwarding logs over UP54 tier in clear text. Your auth.log is now on the wire. Passwords and all. Always wrap it in TLM. And 5. The cross-course callback. A restored backup with a stale UID in fstab drops you to emergency.target. Run mount before you reboot, and use no-fail on anything optional. And with that, P1 is in the books. 12 lessons that took us from a bare ISO to a Debian host you can actually run in production. Foundation, systemed, networking, DNS, storage, scheduling, and now logging. Every layer a SysAdmin touches on day 1 covered. The fleet is auditable, debuggable, and observable. P2 picks it up from here. Stage 03 and 04 are where we harden it and operate it at scale. So, package 1 is officially complete. Foundation and services are locked in. And package 2 is where this gets interesting. Stage 03 hardens the box with inevitables, SSH lockdown, fail2 ban and CrowdSec, kernel tuning, AppArmor, and CVE response. Then Stage 04 operates it, backups, monitoring, Ansible, upgrades, and the grand finale. Run package 2, start when you're ready. See you in lesson 12.